Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We are lighting a virtual campfire, maybe pouring a glass of something warm.
Or maybe something a little stronger.
Or maybe something a little stronger, which, believe it or not, is actually weirdly relevant to the text we're covering today. We are settling in for a story.
Yeah, it really is a story. And it's one that's, equal parts spooky, intellectual, and honestly, weirdly practical.
I love that.
We're looking at a session that covers the limits of the human personality, the mechanics of how we connect with, or I guess, dissociate from our own egos.
And my favorite part? Why sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is scrub your floors or go out dancing at a dive bar.
Exactly. High strangeness meets housekeeping.
I love it. But before we get into the really heavy stuff, we have to do the mandatory housekeeping.
The necessary bits.
Just a reminder to everyone listening, this deep dive is distributed completely free of charge on all major platforms, and it's for educational purposes.
Right. We're here to learn, to explore.
And to have a good time doing it.
Absolutely. And today's exploration, it takes us back to a very specific moment in time. We are cracking open the archives to the early sessions, book 3 of the Seth material.
And we're getting specific. We're looking at session 132.
Yeah, it's the one.
So let's set the scene. The date of record is February 15th, 1965. It's a Monday night. I mean, you can just picture it, right? Mid-60s, winter in Elmira, upstate New York.
Oh, yeah, it's cold.
Yeah.
There's definitely snow on the ground.
And Jane Roberts and her husband Rob Butts are deep into this ongoing experiment with Seth, the energy personality essence that Jane is channeling. But this session, this is not business as usual.
No, it's not. Not at all. This session is actually a debriefing. It's a follow-up. It starts because of something that happened 4 days earlier on a Thursday.
And this something is kind of a big deal.
It's something that, frankly, scared the hell out of him. It's often referred to within the community as the Father Trainor incident.
The Father Trainor incident. That sounds like the title of a mystery novel.
It really does. And if you're at all interested in the mechanics of consciousness, like how the mind works, how we connect to things outside ourselves, and, maybe more importantly, the dangers of doing it wrong, this is a masterclass.
It's a case study.
A perfect case study in what happens when you push the psychic boundaries a little too hard, a little too fast.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's go to that Thursday, February 11th. Jane isn't doing a Seth session. She's just at home.
Right. She's actually trying to do some creative writing. She wants to write a sketch about an old family friend, a Catholic priest.
Father Trainor.
Father Trainor, yeah. He used to visit her childhood home, and she's trying to capture his essence, his personality.
So she's trying to get into character, so to speak.
Exactly. A little method acting. She remembers that this priest used to read poetry aloud, and he had a very specific, booming way of doing it.
Okay, so she's trying to trigger the memory.
She is. She picks up a book and decides to read a couple of poems she remembers him reading. G.K. Chesterton's Lepanto and Gray's Elegy.
Now, Lepanto, have you ever read that one out loud?
I have.
Yeah.
It is not a subtle poem.
Not at all. It's a war poem. It's about a big naval battle. It's got this driving, marching rhythm. John of Austria is going to the war. It's percussive. You almost have to read it loud.
You do. So Jane stands up in her living room, book in hand, and just starts reading aloud. She's just trying to, remember the guy, maybe catch the cadence of his voice for her writing.
But then it goes off the rails.
Then the physics of the room seem to change. It stops being a memory exercise, and it starts becoming a physiological event.
What does she describe? What did it feel like?
She notes later that she felt cold and tingled. Her hands started perspiring, and then her voice changes.
And we're not talking about her just like putting on a little Irish lilt or doing an impression.
No, nothing like that. She describes the volume as tremendous. It became this deep, booming male timbre.
Wow.
Rob, her husband, he's in the other room, and he just hears this thundering voice coming out of his wife. And he notes specifically that it was not the dry, sort of intellectual voice they were used to with Seth.
This was different.
This was emotional. It was powerful. It was filling the whole house.
Jane herself said she felt carried away by the voice. I think that phrase is so telling.
It is.
She felt light, disconnected, almost as if she was outside herself watching this happen. The book felt heavy in her hands, but she was floating.
It's a classic description of dissociation, really. The ego, the part of Jane that says, I am Jane, I am a writer, I am standing in my living room. That part just, it stepped aside. Or maybe it was pushed aside.
And something else stepped in. And here's the part of the story that makes me laugh every single time because it is just so delightfully, frustratingly human.
Oh, I know what's coming.
She finishes this incredible channeled performance of this dead priest reading an epic poem. The room is vibrating, she's sweating, and she looks down at the tape recorder.
And realizes she never hit record.
The agony. Can you even imagine? You have just bent reality, you've channeled a booming Irish priest, and you forgot to press the little red button.
She was furious. In her notes, she actually writes, "I was so angry that I did the whole thing over again."
She did it again, on purpose.
She did it again. And get this, she actually did it 3 times in total because of technical mishaps.
That seems excessive. And maybe a little dangerous.
It's incredibly telling about Jane's personality, I think. It shows her determination, for sure. But it also shows a bit of recklessness.
Right.
She was forcing the door open again and again. She wasn't treating it delicately.
She was demanding the experience.
Exactly. And Rube noted that even the second and third times, the voice was just as distinct. It was definitely not Jane's normal voice. But being the researchers they were, they decided to do a control test later.
Right. They had to be scientific about it.
Of course. So they had her try to read a different poem, one that Father Trainor never would have read.
And what was the idea there? To see if it was just her getting hyped up on the poetry?
Yeah, was it just the rhythm of the poem, or was it a specific connection to Trainor?
And what happened?
Nothing. She couldn't do it. She couldn't summon the voice. She said she got hoarse almost immediately.
Wow. So the phenomenon was specifically linked to the memory or the entity of Father Trainor reading those specific poems.
It seems so. Which brings us to the session itself. 4 days later, Monday night, Seth comes through. And normally, Seth starts with a good evening, a gentle opening.
But not this time.
Not this time. He dives straight in, no preamble. He knows exactly what happened, and he has some opinions on it.
So does he confirm it was real? He doesn't just say, oh, you were just imagining it or anything like that?
Oh, no, he validates it completely.
Yeah.
Seth says the experience was legitimate. He confirms she really did connect with something beyond her usual self. But, and this is a very big but, he calls Jane obstinate.
Ouch. Called out by your own spirit guide. That's rough.
It was a loving critique, but it was definitely stern. Seth points out that while the spontaneity was impressive, the lack of caution was dangerous. And this leads us to one of the most interesting philosophical points of the whole session, the relationship between the ego and the identity.
Let's unpack that, because usually when we think of the ego, we think, well, that's just us, right? I am me, my name, my job, my personality. That's my ego.
Seth challenges that directly. He says it is extremely limiting to regard the ego as the complete self or personality.
So what is it then?
He argues that your true identity is actually much, much more rooted in the inner self. The ego is just a part of it.
So the ego is like the manager, the front desk clerk of your consciousness.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The ego is the portion of the self that deals directly with physical reality. It's necessary, but it's not the whole building.
Okay.
Seth explains that Jane had become fearful of her own spontaneity in her early life. Her ego, kind of clamped down to protect her. But in this Father Trainor experiment, she used a very specific tool to bypass that clamp.
A tool.
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Seth actually calls it out. He notes she had a few drinks before the experiment. He does. And this is fascinating because he doesn't judge it. He just explains the mechanics of it. He says alcohol acts as a depressant on the ego.
Not on the whole person, but specifically on the ego.
Right. When the ego is depressed, meaning its guard is lowered, the inner self dares to go forward.
So the booze didn't make her hallucinate. It just knocked out the security guard so the inner self could run wild.
That's a perfect summary. But Seth warns that while this allows for spontaneity, it removes all the safety checks. He says, and I think there's a key quote from the whole session, the spontaneity is good, the lack of caution is not. We are dealing with delicate balances that must be maintained.
Delicate balances. That sounds like a serious warning against burnout.
It is. He says she rushed. She pushed way too hard. And when you do that, when you force that intense focus inward without the ego stability, you risk entering what he calls a peculiar semi-trance state.
That does not sound pleasant.
No. It's a state where you're not fully here, but you're not fully there either. You're just kind of leaking energy. Seth notes that Jane was expending huge amounts of energy just pretending to be resting, when actually she was churning inside.
Been there. So Seth, being the, cosmic life coach that he is, doesn't just say, hey, stop it.
No, he's more practical than that. He puts her on a diet the psychic
The
diet.
psychic diet. I love it.
He lays down the law. He sets a very strict schedule, he tells them. Only one psychological time experiment per day.
One. And for how long?
He limits it to a maximum of 30 minutes.
30 minutes. That's it. For someone exploring the boundaries of consciousness, that seems short.
It is. He says 1/2 hour is more than sufficient. And he adds a really important rule. If she does something wild and intense, like the poetry reading with the booming voice,
The Father Trainor.
the Father Trainor thing, she has to skip her regular practice for that day. She can't double dip.
It's like an energy budget. You have 100 credits of psychic energy a day. If you spend 150 on a spontaneous channeling, you are in debt.
Precisely. And that debt manifests as physical and mental exhaustion. He explains that intense inner focus is really powerful, but it needs to be brief to be effective. If you drag it out, you lose the excellent intensification, and you just get muddy and drained.
It's so practical. You know, we tend to think of this kind of spiritual work as this boundless thing. The more you meditate, the better. The more you channel, the more enlightened you are.
And Seth is saying, no, do your 30 minutes and then go live your life.
Go live your life.
Because the goal isn't to escape physical reality. The goal is to integrate with it. And that leads to the prescription he gives them. And it's honestly some of the best life advice I've ever read in these texts, whether you're a medium or just a stressed-out office worker.
Oh, this is my favorite part. The Seth lifestyle protocol.
Right. He doesn't tell them to fast or go sit on a mountain. He tells them to take brisk walks.
He literally says brisk walks should be a daily part of Rubert's schedule.
He says walking refreshes the inner self. It connects the body to the environment. It's grounding. But then he goes even further. He looks at their social life and basically says, you two are boring. You need to get out more.
He really does. He laments that they stopped dancing.
He says, I am sorry that it has been necessary to curtail your dancing activities. Going out is an excellent way of recharging energies. By contrast.
By contrast, that's the key phrase right there, isn't it?
It is the key. You cannot have intense inner focus if you don't have intense outer focus to balance it out. If you're always looking inward, you just fall into yourself. You have to look outward at other people, at music, at movement.
He even specifically mentions their friend Mark, whose real name was Bill McDonnell. And Seth says something that just cracks me up every time.
I know the line.
He says, surely you can, for example, go with Mark to one of his jolly haunts.
Jolly.
I just, I love the idea of this disembodied, highly evolved consciousness telling you to go hang out at a dive bar with your buddy.
But look at the wisdom in it. He's telling them to engage in outward enjoyments. He even, and this is the best part, he endorses house cleaning.
Yes. Saturday house cleaning.
He says, and I'm quoting here, his Saturday house cleaning, believe it or not, is excellent for him.
Okay, but why? Why would scrubbing a toilet be a spiritual practice?
Because it's grounding. It is undeniably physical. You are moving matter. You're dealing with dirt and water and objects. You see immediate, tangible results. It pulls your focus completely into the physical present.
Right.
For someone like Jane, who spends so much time floating in the abstract, scrubbing a floor is probably more grounding than an hour of meditation.
It's the anchor. If your consciousness is a balloon, the house cleaning is the string that ties you to the earth.
That's it exactly.
Yeah.
Seth is building a system of checks and balances. 30 minutes of inner work, balanced by brisk walks, dancing, socializing with friends, and cleaning the house.
Speaking of socializing, we should probably talk about the Mark incident you mentioned, because this wasn't just Seth saying, go hang out in the abstract. There was a specific kind of dramatic thing that happened with Bill McDonnell.
Right. This is the side story that really grounds the whole session in the reality of their lives. A few nights before this session, Bill had been visiting them at their apartment.
Okay.
And out of nowhere, he has a massive nosebleed.
And we're not talking about just a little trickle.
No, Seth actually mentions it was a ruptured blood vessel. It was so bad they were about to take him to the emergency room.
Wow.
It stopped just as they were about to leave, but he's too weak to go home, so he ended up staying the night on their couch.
It's a pretty gruesome detail, but Seth uses it to make a point, right? A point about friendship.
He does. Seth takes the time in the middle of this whole session to comment on Bill's character. He calls him very loyal and as trustworthy a friend as you have ever had.
Which is, you know, a nice thing to hear from the other side. But why does Seth bring this up here, in the middle of a lecture on psychic safety?
I think it reinforces that exact theme we were talking about, the need for external connections. Seth points out that Bill has this impulse to get Jane and Rob out of the house, and he says that impulse has been a good one.
Ah, so Bill is like the designated enforcer of the external focus rule.
He's their tether to the real world. When you're deep in this kind of spiritual work, you can get so isolated. You live entirely in your head. You live in the spooky realm.
Right.
And friends like Bill who have real-world problems like sudden nosebleeds and who want to drag you to their jolly haunts, they are the tether. They remind you that you're a human being living in a community with other human beings.
It's a defense against solipsism, really. You
Uh-huh.
can't just float away into the ether if your friend is literally bleeding on your couch. You have to deal with it.
You have to deal with it.
Hmm.
Precisely. It demands your attention. And Seth seems to value that demand. He sees it as fundamentally healthy.
So we have the danger of the Father Trainor voice. We have the prescription to dance and clean. And then Seth zooms out even further to look at the seasonal rhythm of their health.
Yeah, this is another layer of the whole physical vessel maintenance plan. Seth mentions that Jane usually has what he calls an uneasy period that starts in mid-January.
The winter blues. I mean, we probably call it seasonal affective disorder now, maybe.
Very likely. Mid-January in upstate New York, I imagine that's pretty bleak. Seth notes that her energies usually quicken from January to spring, but if that new energy isn't managed or given an outlet, it turns into anxiety or depression.
But he gives her a gold star this time, right?
He does. He notes that this year, she largely avoided it. But he still gives instructions for the road ahead. He says, it is important he gets sufficient rest, particularly now through early spring. If possible, also vitamins from now until early spring.
Vitamins. Again, it is just so refreshingly practical.
And he encourages them to resume their art. He tells Jane to go back to her painting. He tells Rob to do his portrait work.
She calls them physical outlets.
Yes. Painting is another perfect form of external focus. You are taking all that energy from inside, and you are putting it onto a canvas outside of you. It's a flow.
Right.
If you just hold that energy in, it either stagnates or it explodes, like the Father Trainor voice.
Right.
But if you paint or dance or clean, the energy flows through you and out into the world. And according to Seth, that is health.
It's such a holistic view of spirituality that I think gets lost sometimes. We think spirituality is about leaving the body, transcending the physical. But Seth is arguing that for us right now, in these lives, spirituality is about occupying the body effectively.
We are dealing with delicate balances. That's really the mantra of this entire session. You can explore the cosmos, you can channel dead priests, you can unlock the secrets of the universe. But don't forget to take your vitamins and wash the dishes.
And go to the bar with Mark.
And definitely go to the bar with Mark.
I want to circle back for a second to something Seth said about the ego. Because he said Jane used alcohol to depress the ego so she could dare to go forward. If the ego is the thing limiting us, why shouldn't we just try and suppress it all the time? Why is that lack of caution so bad?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? If the ego is the villain, let's just kill it, right? But Seth never says the ego is the villain.
Okay.
He says treating it as the whole self is the error. That's the distinction.
Okay, so distinguish that for me.
The ego is your interface. Think of it like the spacesuit you have to wear to survive on planet Earth. If you just rip off the spacesuit, which is kind of what Jane did by suppressing the ego too much with alcohol and sheer force of will, you are exposed to the raw vacuum of the inner self and all the energies beyond.
And the raw vacuum is powerful.
It's way too powerful for daily life. That's why the voice was booming. That's why she was shaking and cold. Her system was completely overloaded. The ego acts as a regulator, like a step-down transformer. It takes that massive cosmic voltage and steps it down to a manageable 110 volts so you can, toast your bread and talk to your husband.
So the goal isn't to destroy the ego, but to, what? Partner with it, make it more flexible.
To expand it, to make it more porous. Seth wants Jane to have a disciplined spontaneity. He wants her to access that powerful inner self through the training, through the sessions, in a controlled way. Not by knocking out the guard and kicking down the door.
It's the difference between opening a window to let in some fresh air and blowing out the entire wall with dynamite.
That is a perfect analogy. The Father Trainor incident was dynamite. It was impressive, it was loud, it was spooky, but you can't live in a house with no walls.
Yeah.
Seth wants them to learn how to build windows.
And the checks and balances, the sleeping, the walking, the cleaning, those are the things that reinforce the wall so that they can handle having the windows open.
Exactly. A strong physical foundation supports a higher consciousness. If the foundation is weak, if you're tired, if you're vitamin deficient, depressed, isolated, and you try to open that window, the whole structure can collapse.
Seth says something towards the end. He says, "The fear of failure is insidious and it is this which must be combated.
Yeah, he's reassuring them. He knows they're trying to do something incredibly difficult. He even emphasizes that Rob's confidence is a huge help to Jane. It's a team effort.
It's really touching, actually, how much he seems to care about their well-being. He's not just a dispenser of cosmic information. He says, I am trying to look at your situation from all angles to see if any other adjustments should be made.
He's like a mechanic for their lives.
Totally.
But a mechanic who can see the engine running while the car is still moving. He sees the energy expenditure that they can't see. He knows that when Jane is pretending to rest, it's actually hard work for her system.
That part really resonated with me. It pretends that he is merely resting, but actually he is expanding his energies. I mean, how often do we do
At
that?
the time.
We sit on the couch, scrolling on our phones, thinking we're resting, but our brains are firing at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
It's active idleness. It's draining. Seth's definition of rest is true disengagement, or, conversely, a completely different kind of engagement, like the dancing.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive into session 132, what do you think is the big takeaway for the listener? I mean, we aren't all channeling entities in our living rooms.
I think the lesson is about the energy economy of your own life. We all have an inner life and an outer life. And if you spend all your time in your head worrying, planning, dreaming, analyzing, you are depleting your account. You have to make deposits back into that account by engaging with the physical world.
Touch grass, basically.
Literally, go for a walk, clean your kitchen, hug a friend, go dancing. These things are not distractions from your real work or your spiritual growth. They are the fuel for it.
And don't be afraid of the jolly haunts.
Never ever fear the jolly haunts.
It's just fascinating to me that Seth, this, vast intellect from another dimension, looks at our human lives and says, you guys have it good. You have springtime, you have dancing, you have friends. For God's sake, enjoy it.
He says, even I, through you, look forward to your springtime.
That's such a beautiful line. He appreciates the seasons through them. It's a reminder that we should appreciate them too.
That is a great place to leave it. A reminder that your ego is just a small part of you, but it's a necessary part. So treat it well, give it some vitamins, and take it out for a spin every once in a while.
And if you suddenly start speaking in a booming Irish baritone, maybe put the poetry book down and go do the dishes.
Solid advice.
And before we go, maybe a provocative thought for you to carry with you. Seth says the ego limits our identity, if that's true. What talents, what voices, what capabilities are sitting just beneath the surface of your personality, just waiting for you to get out of your own way? And can you maybe access them without blowing the doors off? Something to chew on. We want to give a huge thank you to the source of all this wisdom, the Seth material, and to the publisher, New Awareness Network.
Absolutely. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't just take our word for it. Go to the source. You can find the books and learn so much more at sethcenter.com, the early sessions.
Seriously, go check it out. It is a treasure trove of information. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.
Stay curious and keep your balance.
Yeah.
See you in the next deep dive.